W here. Today I want to talk about, should Christians be charging for presets, like worship presets, church presets, or tones, and that whole sort of thing. And it's sort of on this level of like, should Christians be profiting off church and profiting off church music and worship music and stuff. And it's an interesting topic to me because it recently came up. I'm not just making this video out of nowhere. It came up and there's been some controversy on the internet about it. And there's a little corner of the internet called Geartalk Praise and Worship. It's not a group I recommend because it's, I would say it's mostly sarcastic meme stuff. But there is some serious discussion. And it recently came up because this bass player from a big church, Elevation Church in North Carolina, they're a really big church. They make a lot of music that's very popular all around the country and worldwide, gets sung in a lot of churches. They got a famous pastor, Stephen Furtick, wears some very nice shoes on the stage, if you know what I'm saying. Some very expensive sneakers at times. And it's a church with a lot of eyeballs on it. And the bass player there, one of the bass players, started selling his presets for the Quad Cortex for $75. Started making all of this big, I can't believe it, $75, that's ridiculous, or whatever, all this stuff. And, I think it was just 6 months ago or a year ago, the guitar player there, and I believe he's a guy on staff and like the music director, E. Dale Edwards, fabulous guitar player, really kind dude. He was selling his, I think, for about $100, and it's really what he uses on the records and live, and he put a bunch of captures in, $100, bunch of controversy around it. David Hislop, Bethel guy, he started a whole company like doing this stuff, right? He was doing it under his name, and then he started Tone Factor. They make tremendous stuff. They make amazing stuff. David's a really nice dude, and Kenyon Reed there too. Nothing but good things to say about all those people I just mentioned, right? And obviously, I have good friends at worship tutorials and worship artistry and all this. Just all over the place, right? It's like good people everywhere. Tone Shepherd. I'm not coming at this to like call anybody out, but I want to talk about this subject. You notice at the beginning of this video, I'm probably unbiased because I sell this stuff too. And so it's an interesting topic for me, but I'm not a Christian business. So that product you saw in the beginning, that's like our everything worship bundle number 7. And basically, here's the products we make. I don't consider Tone Junkie a Christian business. I'm a Christian man, and I'm often very outspoken in my content, but I don't see this business as having like a mission that's like heavenly or godly or something. I'm just a Christian person, you know what I mean? Like Yeshua HaMashiach, Christ is King. I will unapologetic, and if that comes through my content, I don't care. Sometimes people want to say something a little negative about it, or whatever, or people want to joke. I mean, it doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother me at all. But we have these products, and I'll tell you straight up, they're very good sellers. They're evergreen products. We have this Helix 100 pack, like Worship 100 for Helix, and it's a big seller. And the Everything Worship Bundle. Now, when I say they're big sellers, they're never the best seller of the day, week, month, whatever. It's never number one. But it's like an evergreen product. It keeps selling month after month. Even when it drops down, it stays at this level. And then when we release new stuff, it goes up, and then it slowly just comes back down. There's a big market of people who need this stuff and want this stuff. And I know a lot of these guys, and I get a lot of feedback from people who play at my church, from people who buy these things. And so I know who this customer is. It's a customer. It's not the guys who troll the internet, watch a million YouTube videos about guitar. It's not the guys who have spent the 10,000 hours dialing in their amps and their guitar stuff. It's not the professionals or the semi-pros. It's the dudes who have real jobs, like real jobs, right? It's the insurance adjusters. It's the investment advisors. It's the guys who own a landscaping company. It's the night shift manager at the local pizza place. You know what I'm saying? It's the dude in between jobs who's doing like DoorDash during the day. It's all of these things, right? It's the handyman turned like a carpenter, and he's doing, you know what I mean? Like, it's all of the normal jobs that people have. They spend all their time doing those jobs, and then they really want this stuff dialed in, because what I hear from customers is, the number one thing I hear is, man, this saved me so much time in my preparation. They still show up, learn the songs, know the songs. But when they sit down with a song now and they have it all mapped out on their Kemper or Helix, whatever, intro, verse, chorus for that song, they know the tone is going to be right. They can immediately just start learning the parts and going with it, rather than learning the parts and going, wait, what's the tone there? Now I got to dial that in. Oh, well, if I change this preset, doesn't it affect what the sound I need for the song before? Oh, well, I only have one delay pedal, or I'm still using this analog thing, or my reverb doesn't really recall, very easily. I don't want to be doing too much button pressing. All this stuff is stuff I've heard from players who buy this. So to me, I see that use. I personally don't use these on a weekend. I personally do not. But that's why people buy them, love it or hate it. Now, here's the question, because I saw a lot of people get upset, and they have this whole thing like, well, you shouldn't be charging. Jesus threw over the tables in the temple and blah, blah, blah. Let me give you my perspective on this. And by the way, I'm different than all the Christian guys out there who sell this stuff under like Christian businesses, and I'm not saying anything negative about them. I'm just pointing out that a lot of those guys, and what I see in Christendom, right? Here's my opinion now. What I see in Christendom, which is, and like business, and I see it not just with preset makers. I'm not calling out worship tutorials or ToneShip or anything like that. I'm talking about the publishing companies, Beth Moore, who writes Bible studies. I'm talking about Jack Hayford and all his books. I'm talking about Prayer of Jabez. I'm talking about all of it, right? I'm talking about Stephen Furtick and all this stuff. I got a lot of things to say about money and the church and all that stuff, but let me just say one thing that I especially notice. There is a level of language that goes over that sort of this veil that gets put over anybody in the church who touches commerce. And they always use these sayings like, well, we just want to resource the church. We really just want to equip people, right? We just want to be a resource and help people have better worship and help it. Let me just tell you something. That is never going to be what I tell people is my mission. I want you to buy my worship presets and anything else I buy because of a profit motive. I want you to buy it. Now, I want my product to be so good that you go, wow, what an amazing deal. And right now it's all half off and the new bundle's out, and that means you can get it for like the whole bundle for like less than $75. Anyway, but I want you to find so much value in the product because it's a voluntary exchange. You go, wow, what a great deal. I'm going to buy that. And then I want you to say thank you. If you say thank you, that means you feel like you got a deal. You feel like there was value there. It helped you. This will save you time, right? And so if you buy something like one of those products that I have, or you buy it from somebody else or whatever, and you spend $60 or $100 or $75 or whatever, and if that saves you an hour this week, or 30 minutes this week and 30 minutes next and 30 minutes next and 30 minutes next, I mean, you could equate that to a dollar amount that you're actually making. Like, what's your time worth? But I do it for a profit motive. I notice that there's this veil over anywhere the church meets commerce where people put this language on it. And I don't want to say they're being dishonest, but I will say this, they're not self-aware. I take all that with a grain of salt. I think people are showing a real lack of awareness when they say, we just want to equip the church. We just want to equip everyone. We just want to be, we just want to be part of your worship and just worship God, help you have a better worship experience. That can be a product pitch, but listen, that's not why you do it, or you do it for free. And let me ask you a question. I'll prove it to you. How many times have you ever heard a publishing company, a book company, a Christian record label or whatever say, hey guys, we really just do this to equip the church, and it's November and we already covered all our bills for the year, so everything's free for the rest of the year? You've never once heard anyone say that. When's the last time you heard anyone like one of those publishing places that puts out all the Beth Moore Bible studies? When's the last time you heard one of them say, hey, you know what? We've been so popular and my whole goal with this has just been to cover the expenses. So actually we're going to lower the price of all our stuff. You've never heard that. Now there are examples where, Jack Hayford, I think, famously said, hey, I've made enough money off this book. My church is not going to pay me. Like, I don't need the church to pay me anymore. I believe Francis Chan also did a similar thing. Basically, he wrote a book and he hasn't taken any more money, I believe, for stuff. after that. So there's some of this, but to me, when I hear that, I just go, well, look, man, that's not really why, because if you sell way more than you think you would, you kind of invest it in doing more, and it's more things with a profit motive. It's not, you don't actually then go, hey, I really only set out to make $5,000 and I did, so now it's free forever. I've never really seen anybody do that. Now, people like me, we put out a lot of free stuff, right? And a lot of the people who you might be thinking of put out a lot of free stuff. And I'm sure the Beth Moores of the world and churches and everybody, they put out a lot of free stuff, and that's great. But I personally just become uncomfortable putting that whole thing on it. But why? Why am I comfortable saying, buy my worship presets, they might help you, and I have a profit motive. I want you to buy my stuff. Look, obviously that's why I do it. I don't, or else I would make everything free, right? But HW, you need to work. You need to work. Of course I need to work. Of course I need to work. But if I sell 30% more than I need this year, or 30% more than I need this month, I'm not all of a sudden going to send you a bunch of money back. So it must be that I have a profit motive. And here's a thing that I notice in Christendom and Christians. We all think that's bad somehow. We've all accepted this socialist trash mumbo jumbo that you shouldn't be able to make a profit. Are you kidding me? Trade is made a win, man. The more things you can acquire and the more trade available to you, and I mean trade in the economic sense, the happier you will be, because you can find things that suit your needs. People are better off, not worse, because something's available in the world. If you don't like it, don't buy it. The people who buy my Worship 100 pack they buy it because they go, that is worth more to me than the $60 he's charging, because the whole site's half off. It's worth more to me than the $100 he's charging. That's why I bought it. No one's forcing them, right? I'm not the government. I can't force you. I can't change the tax rate and then force you to pay it. I'm a person. I'm an unapologetic capitalist person who is a libertarian, sometimes an anarcho-capitalist who just passionately believes that I create products that people should want to buy, and that means I should profit off that because I'm solving their problem. I don't see how that conflicts with my faith at all. And so when I see these people a real Christian would give it away for free. Okay, really? You think that? Let's just talk about this for a second, because it's in the New Testament and the Old. I don't remember the Old Testament, but it's in 1 Timothy, where Paul harkens back to a verse that says, the laborer is worth his wage. It actually comes from I believe it's Leviticus, it might be Deuteronomy, where specifically it said, do not muzzle your ox while he treads the grain. A worker is worth his wage. Okay, this is really the thing you got to understand, why everyone who's saying, oh, I can't believe someone's charging $75. You're an idiot if you say that. You have no argument. You're dumb. You just are. Listen. In the ancient world, to say this was very specific. What are they talking about? We're not an agricultural society anymore, probably. Most people watching this are not working agricultural jobs. Statistically, I know that to be true. The ox would basically be tied up, and all the grain would be thrown on the floor. He would then walk around and it would crush the grain, okay? They would muzzle the ox so that the ox wouldn't lean down and eat some of the grain. Well, it's kind of cruel if you think about it, right? It's a little, because it implies that the ox is hungry, and also that you won't give him any of your of the ox, and yet he's helping produce it, right? He's plowing the field, and so this is saying treat your livestock well, and it's a lesson. Treat your workers well. Workers should be able to eat. You shouldn't be exploiting people. There shouldn't be usury. A worker is worth his wage, meaning if you are deriving value from the worker for your benefit, then he's worth the wage that he earns, and he's worth the value that they produce. Does that mean you can't have a profit from employing someone? I think there's other stories that would show you that's not true. Logically, I think that's not true. Also, it would be very expressly written in Jewish law and in the Messianic text that Jesus would have been outspoken about it, and he's not there, which tells me it wasn't a very important message. If you didn't come out and say no one should employ anybody or make any money, there you go, right? But in the ancient world, if you were saying that about an ox, what did that mean about a worker? And so this is obviously applicable to us today when we think of someone who might be selling presets. I especially think it's in poor taste to criticize someone like this guy at Elevation, because I know from all the professional musicians I know, I'm telling you, the church does not pay this guy a lot of money. Being the Elevation bass player, what does that even mean? Well, it probably means he volunteers there, maybe gets some honorarium, maybe is paid something during the week. But it means he's really probably only being paid for those tours and the projects. Look, guys, I don't know this dude specifically. I know a lot of people who have done this, who have been on Christian tours. I know people at the big churches who they buy my stuff. They use tones that I make. I've known them just through the world. You don't make a lot of money doing this. And if you look, you notice that people often leave those positions and end up doing something else. Because there's just not a lot of money in it. And there's 10 guys behind you who are willing to do it like for free. So even when places are honoring somebody, people have kids, a worker's worth his wage. If the guy's laying down just insanely great bass tone and you are sitting there an hour a week, 2 hours a week trying to get that bass tone, how is it not a great deal for $75 to go buy it and get that bass tone that you're trying to cop? Especially when, look, can you show me any decent sounding pedal for $75? Like, we're living in a world where a lot of these things are $175, $275 for an overdrive that's going to give you one sound. It's not going to be a whole completed sound. It's not going to be the thing you can plug in and go front of house with and just go right to it. Not to mention, bass players are not guitar players. They usually don't bring a ton of gear anyway. And this dude's lining up everything, and it's maybe that's why people are upset, because they think it's more simple. But for guitar, it's definitely not more simple, right? So a worker's worth his wage. Like, don't trash a guy and don't trash a guy for trying to make some money on the side. I'm sure he's got kids. I'm sure he's got a mortgage. He's living in North Carolina, probably near one of the churches, which means he's living in one of the more expensive markets in the Southeast. People from New York and San Francisco who pay $4,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Oh man, I wish I paid those rent prices. Yeah, shut up. You also make like $24 an hour making macchiatos at Starbucks. You go to those other places, you make $12 an hour making that same macchiato. So, look, I don't live in California anymore because it's a shit place to live and because everything's way too expensive. And that's happening to a bit in Nashville, but I'm fine now. I got a house, I got some kids that are in school, kind of hard to pick up and, move to northern Louisiana where stuff is cheap. That's just the way it is, man. But, what does it say about you if you're criticizing people who are like, hey, I made something available for free? Oh, I can't believe you make it available for free. Oh, really? What have you made for free? I didn't think so, smartass. Okay. HW, you can't say that. You're saying you're a Christian man. You called somebody a smartass. I guess you better put that cross on your back and carry it away. Anyway, look, man, generosity versus commerce. Obviously, we're called to be generous. We're called to be generous even in our commerce. Let me give you an example of that. In the Jewish law, this is also in Deuteronomy. They were told, do not. When you reap the harvest, don't reap the corners and don't reap to the edges. And also, do not go back and glean in your gleaning. Do not go back and pick up what has fallen onto the ground. Now, let's put this in context. What does this mean? Very specifically, they were being told, do not plow the corners or up to the very edge of your field. It's mentioned in two places. One place says corners. The other says up to the edge of your field. That's probably a difference in translation. And also we derive we have there's like 3 or 4 main sources for the Torah, and there's so you go look how the Bible's put together, and why we know we have extremely accurate language, and how identical the 3 or 4 sources are to each other, and how the big difference is really the name of God that's used, and why those 3 traditions matter. You go do a Bible study on that. Actually, you won't be studying the Bible, you're studying history. But you can study the Bible. That's good too. Generosity and commerce. Look, what are they saying there? This was what the rest of that says. It says, "Do not plow the corners of your field; leave it instead for the widows and the aliens." So this is saying, when you're in commerce, when you're producing food that's meant to be sold. This is obviously food that's meant to be sold. This is a farmer, someone working in agriculture. When you do this, don't plow the corners. Why? This is for the alien and the widow. For I am the Lord your God is the next part of that law there. Now, there's a couple things to point out here. Obviously, they're saying leave it. It becomes a de facto welfare. It means for the poor, the hungry, the widows who have no men to harvest and feed the women, someone whose husband has died and she has no one can work anymore, and if she's a widow, maybe her son is taking care of her or whatever, leave it for them. But what's the real spirit behind this? The corner of a field and the edges would have been, you don't produce crops all the way up to the edge. You got to remember too, these aren't drought resistant, bug resistant Monsanto seed here. This is old school, natural. And if you ever see a field, how it forms when the fields are just overgrown, the corner of your field is where 2 roads run along it, right? And so what that means is natural roadways and man-made roadways, people will cut the corner sharp, and they'll often be the most gravel and rock and sediment and dirt where nothing is going to get thrown onto that corner. You're going to have the most wind exposure, and the corner is going to get most of those crops, because the corner is going to be exposed to the most sunlight, is going to get like double the sunlight. So what that means is naturally the corner of a field will become rounded out, because the very tippy corner won't produce very well. And as you get to the interior of the field, you'll have much more lush vegetation because of shade. You'll have the right amount of shade, and you'll have the right amount of moisture retention because of the shade. So the corner of the field is the least producing little bit anyway. Okay, why is that important? Because the farmer is not being asked to give up his very best. He's not saying, and the spirit of this works along with the next part. And the grain that you spill in the gleaning, don't go back and gather it up. Meaning this, in the abundance of your harvest, you're not trying to spill grain. You're going to be careful not to spill grain, but you're always going to spill some grain. When the sort of coffers are overflowing, the stuff that spills out, don't be miserly and go back and grab it. Instead, this thing, the excess that pours out, the grain that spills on the ground, and those corners that don't produce much anyway, don't be so miserly and usury that you're the type of person that muzzles the ox. Don't eat any grain, ox. That's my grain that you're working on. Don't be the type of person who's like, hang on, go back and get that little bit of grain you just spilled, when you have full stores of grain that you're filling up. Don't be that person. So it's saying, be generous. Obviously, this is a Christian principle, okay? But the principle here is like, it doesn't say spill all your grain on the ground and let everyone just take it. Why? Because a worker's worth his wage. So you have to appreciate, like, maybe this guy in particular is not offering anything for free. Patonjaki does, Works for Tutorials does, all these places do. And because I make stuff for sale, I have way more stuff for free than even would exist if I never charged any money for it. Right? I always tell people, I can do this because I'm one of the most prolific, makers of stuff of the past 8 years, right? But realistically, you don't need anything. You don't need anything. You can download my free pack. You get a deluxe reverb. You get an AC30. You get the sounds I use for worship on a weekend. But who am I? Maybe you don't want it. Maybe you don't care about it. I'm not on the elevation stage, and maybe that means something to you. Maybe you are a respecter of persons, and you go, well, HW is not famous enough. I don't want his tone, right? Look up respecter of persons in the Bible. But I'm a respecter of tone. If the tone is good, the tone is good. So my last kind of point here, first one was value, the value of the labor. A worker's worth his wage. My next point I had written down here is generosity versus commerce. Of course, obviously you should be generous, but you're never called to be so generous that you don't make any money and that you shouldn't value your work. You would never call the ox selfish for being hungry in his work and wanting to reach down and eat. And you can call the harvester selfish because he harvests, reaps a whole huge amount, and then goes back and goes, oh, get that little bit of grain we fell. Don't let anyone get it. They might get a little bit of grain. Because do you know how hard it is to still come along and get enough grain to make bread from what's spilled or what's in the corners? You're not solving world hunger here is my point. Anyway, last point. Context of the product. Look, Suze and I have made these things available, and you can believe they're worth something or not, right? That's up to the person making the buying decision. Obviously, the people who buy it think the demos sound good and want to buy it. The people who don't want to buy it are just going to go, that's not worth it to me. I already have great tone that I love. People are complimenting me on my tone. The reason I don't use one specifically for each song is that I have some sort of go-to tones, and then I don't have a problem just dialing something in real quick on the fly or making little changes. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from my sound guy just specifically on how high a boost should be or and all those things might be worked into those presets, but those presets are built on different amps. The demos show different guitars. They're not really built with any guitar in mind, so to speak, but I just have something dialed in for me that works in my little 6-piece group. You know what I mean? And it works with my singers and whatever. And even just the other day, I was having another conversation with them, and someone was going, man, we had this guy who's a professional start playing with us. And he's done all sorts of Christian tours, and there's multiple professionals who play with us. You can go back. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name drop. It doesn't, because none of it matters. None of it matters. But anyway, his tone's a little different, and he's using his setup that he's been using live, and so then he's doing like a bunch of worship stuff with us. And so we were commenting like, oh, you know what? His sound's a little darker, but here's where that works really well. And then he's using this like verby like motion delay thing that kind of sounds like an old tape machine, but like a cassette tape, like kind of behind the tone. And it really worked beautifully. And so now I'm like, I got to copy that, So anyway, look, if you're sitting there really trying to get the sound that's on that record, why not get it from the guy on the record? Meaning, if that's the sound he used, you're getting it right from the source. How is that not the best solution to your problem? So this dude charging for the bass stuff and the Bethel presets that David Hislop has made and that Kenyon Reed are making, the stuff that anybody makes for the stuff they've recorded, how is that not going to be like a great solution to your problem? It may not be the one you decide. You might like your tone a little different. You don't have their singers. You don't have their drums. You don't have their mix. You don't have their plugins they're using. You're not using the David. Go watch the David Funk video on how Bethel gets his bass tone and everything, and how they put everything through this plugin and that plugin, and why your modeler never really is going to sound like a produced Bethel record or your bass or whatever. But the point is, go to the source. How is that not going to be like? How is this guy's thing? If you're covering his music, how is the player's presets not worth as much as Stevie Ray Vaughan's presets would be worth if you're in a Stevie Ray Vaughan cover band? HW, are you saying these guys are as good as Stevie Ray Vaughan? I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. My point is, if that's the tone you're after, if that's the A+ end all be all, that's what I want, getting it from that person has to be a smart thing to do, and it's probably worth some amount of money to you, and no one's being ripped off. Can I end this rant now? HW. Out. Oh, by the way, 50% off all worship presets and all the presets on the store. Go buy something. I got a profit motive, remember?